Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life discussion. I'm your host, Marcia Trajano, and with me today is Dr. Sonia Doi. Sonia, it's so good to have you with us, and I'm very excited to be able to discuss aspects of our freedom to choose, our free will. Indeed, we are free to live a life of happiness or, say, a life of suffering. And according to Joanna de Angelis, the immovable, deterministic imperatives concerning the physical body are life and death. And even those two imperatives are subject to change, she says. So, like me, all of you who are here with us today may wonder about this idea about our intentions or even lack of intentions can determine our ability to be happy. But before we start our conversation in earnest, I would like to thank all of you who are listening to our podcast today. And if this is the first time you're joining us in this program, please note that the Psychology and Spirituality weekly talks are based on the works by Joanna de Angelis, and we're here to offer the safe space to confront, compare, correlate, and expand spirituality concepts from a psychological lens. And we do this to bring insights, tips, real world advice to help you and me lead a better life. Please note that today's program is sponsored by TV Mansão do Caminho, the United States Spiritist Federation, the International Spiritist Council, and AMI Brazil. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already done so, and let us know. Let us know your thoughts, your questions, your feedback, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. But Sonia, thank you. Welcome to our program. I just wanted to say that when I was getting ready to talk to you today, I came to this concept that freedom of choice is a key factor that can indeed influence a person's happiness, right? And there's some interesting studies today that show that it can actually be the driver or the cause to our happiness. And in about 2008, so we're talking about 15, 16 years ago, there's a paper written by Ronald Engelhardt that states that freedom can predict happiness better than any other measure. And when you keep going onto that same line of thought on the same subject, there are actually other studies that found that people who feel in control of their lives, which is partly due to that freedom of choice, right, tend to be the happiest people. There was a 76 experiment, actually, and I say this because I'm going through a very personal experience with assisted living nursing home residents. But anyways, in 1976, this study, patients or the residents were given the freedom, just that you choose what you want to do. Do you want to have a movie night or do you want to have other types of activities? And that study showed that just by offering the choice, they were living better. They were more alert. They were in a better mood, etc., etc. So those, of course, are right freedom choice from a material perspective. And I keep thinking, Sonia, the FOMO, right, fear of missing out, counter to the ability of having choices, I keep thinking that maybe fewer choices could be actually better for me. We go to a supermarket today, and there's so many, cereal, types of cereals that it can get lost. But anyways, let's pause because we're not here to talk about cereal or movie night. We're talking about something else, right? And I want to ask you maybe Sonia, if we can start our conversation today about freedom of choice, you can talk a little bit about Joanna de Angelis' thoughts on that topic, and maybe how do you specifically interpret from your lens of from this cross section between spirituality and medicine?
Thank you. I want to first say how grateful I am of being part of this program. So, Marcia, thank you so very much. And I'm so happy to be with all of you who follow this podcast. And I hope I can fill in some knowledge that I bring from Spiritism, from Joanna de Angelis on this topic, which is very interesting. So, as you said, Marcia, yeah, choices. Choices are the key when we are confronting suffering. We can choose to suffer, be miserable, or we can choose to learn with that experience, move along, move forward, and be happy as much as we can.
Mhm.
So, yeah, there is a law of free will. We all everyone has free will. So sometimes we don't understand exactly what is free will. Yeah, because some people are locked in the situation. I'm suffering so much and I feel I'm locked. So they're
Mhm.
they're concentrating on their own suffering. And we have the choice of getting out of that situation, not concentrating only on us, on our own situation, but looking on other situations. How can I get out of this? And as you said, there are many papers, many studies showing that more choices we have, happier we are because we really have other choices. And people may say, well, what choice do I have if I'm suffering, if I'm miserable here?
And I
There's,
keep, yeah, and I keep thinking, sorry to interrupt you, but I keep thinking, right? Um, just a thought. There are internal and external triggers that may put us in a state of, uh, right? I'm a victim. I don't know. We can talk about socioeconomic status. We can talk about my family did not provide me enough education. We can talk about so many different reasons for why we may feel and may be from a material lens in a state of less than or impoverished or uh, non-deserving or even in a disenfranchised situation where I look at my neighbor and look, my neighbor has
Mhm,
this, and I came already lacking. And I keep thinking, Sonia, right? When do we start to fall in that, just that, like you're talking about, this sense of I'm a victim, therefore looking at myself, right? I'm zooming in, I'm fixed with that idea, and I start to complain. Oh, life is horrible. Everyone is awful to me, and it just keeps becoming one leading to the other to the other. What
mhm.
can we do?
Well, I think first, not I think, but we learn with Spiritism that
Mm,
we should look at others. We should not be selfish in thinking, that we are the only ones who are suffering. Everyone in this planet is subjected. Does not mean that we should or we will, but we are
mhm.
subjected to suffering because we are in a planet of trials and expiations. But we are fortunately moving.
Yeah.
The
So tell us a
planet
little bit
is
about, yeah,
changing.
tell us a little bit about the concept. And this is something that Spiritus brings to us, this concept that we are, our planet that we live, right, is in this evolutionary path, and where we are and what does it mean? If you don't mind, Sonia.
Absolutely not. No, this is really very the core of this talk, I think, because
Mhm.
we should realize that we are in this phase of the planet. We inhabit this planet that is now moving uh, into a new phase, and we are moving with it because we are, the core of the planet. We change as the planet changes. We are pushed into being better. We are pushed into a more evolved self. So there's no change without transformation. The transformation many times are painful. And I usually like to look at an example of people who are in the school or athletes
Uh-huh.
to who are aiming to be a champion on something, and they have to train. That training is very painful and heavy, but they are doing that, going through pain to achieve a goal. What is our goal? Is the goal that God set to us to
Yes.
be perfect,
And
to
my, oh no, by the
prove.
way, yeah, and by the way, the when you talk about athletes, the personification of that to me is always Michael Phelps. I love swimming, right?
Yeah.
And what he has done for swimming. But when he chose, right, several Olympics ago, when Michael Phelps chose, along with his coach, that he was not just going to be gold medalist, but also gold medalist in, I believe it was like 8 different areas. And he did this because he was going through depression, everyone.
Mhm.
After getting the gold medals before, he immediately got into depression for a year. And he came out with this idea that in 3 years, he would, and he announced in advance of everyone, right? We are going to be receiving gold medals in all those categories. But like you said, he trained because what the muscles for one type of category for swimming may not be as in evidence as in another. So he had to really become a holistic, which is an interesting idea. We can go into
Mhm.
that in a different time or day, but he did, and he worked in, and he said he grew muscles that he had never done, even though his whole life, since a little kid, was devoted to swimming. So I think it's very interesting, painful, but with knowing that goal, you can achieve
Exactly.
amazing things, but it doesn't mean that's not going to be, without any sort of suffering or commitment, right?
And that's a great example, Marcia, that you just brought about Michael Phelps. And there are the what they call the para athletes.
Yes,
The
yes,
they were born or during an accident, whatever. They are now confronting a challenge, physical challenge, but they went through it, suffering, but they didn't get stuck on that
yes,
situation. They actually went over and they came as a champion, meaning they went over, they came over that situation. And I think that's a beautiful example. How, if we are suffering, look at the examples of these athletes
yes,
who may not have legs, but they are still kind of able to win competitions or to compete. So it's very, very interesting. When we are suffering, we must look into others, get out of ourselves, look.
yes.
And Andrea Luiz, in some of his messages, says, if you feel that you're suffering, go into a hospital,
Yeah,
look into those people, you
yeah.
know.
But
So
it becomes more
there's,
relative, right? So the idea here, everyone, is to get out of yourself, right?
yeah,
Just
yeah,
snap out of it. But Sonia, right? Going to the hospital is awesome. Doing something is awesome. But what if you're in such a state of depression, say, that it's not so easy to snap out of it? How can we help? And I say this because maybe our loved ones, right? Our children, our parents, our best friends, all of a sudden, like Michael Phelps, get into a state of, I don't know, anxiety or depression that puts them in such vulnerable phase. What can we talk? How can we help them?
Wonderful that you brought this up. Uh, Sometimes it's easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
And we can tell people, yeah, choose, make a good choice, get out of yourself.
Yeah.
But that's not so easy. If you are into depression, anxiety, and there's nothing that you can do by yourself to get out of that situation, please look for help.
Yeah.
There's professional help for that. There's several types of help, I would say. Professional
Mm-hmm.
help, psychologists, psychiatrists, other doctors, and spiritual help,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Whatever is your religion,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. We are spiritists, but we're not talking only to spiritists. Whatever is your religion, look
Yeah.
for spiritual help
Yeah.
because that will make your soul stronger. We need to get out of situations, suffering situations, painful situations. We need to be stronger. God never gives a load heavier that we can bear.
Yeah.
So we need to remember that God is always there to help us, but we need to knock on the door and say, I need help. So
Yeah.
either going to your religious leader or to pray, right? And ask for help. But praying is not enough. We
Mm-hmm.
must pray, we must look for spiritual help, but
Yeah.
sometimes we need professional
Yeah.
help. And sometimes, and most times, with that professional help and spiritual help, we have to do something. We have
Yeah.
to act. Is our
Yes.
action, right? And I just want to mention a little bit medicine, traditional medicine has looked into our patients as just from the physical point of view. But
Yes.
now this is also changing,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of resources looking
Mhm.
into spirituality in medicine. So
Yeah.
there are trainings, and I just want to mention George Washington University. They
Hmm.
have an institute for spirituality and health,
Awesome.
at George Washington, and they train physicians and other healthcare professionals to deal with patients from the spiritual point of view, meaning having compassion, looking at the spiritual needs of the patients and helping them from that point of view too. So uh, I'm really excited that this
Yeah.
idea is growing in the United States and other countries, so that our physicians will look into a patient who is, of course, if a person has mental disturbances, you go to a
Hmm.
psychiatrist, they might already have that knowledge or
Hmm.
send the person to spiritual help too. But people with other illnesses and
Yeah.
sometimes, right?
Yeah. No, no, I was just going to say it almost like a pivot point where medicine is changing to adapt to our needs as it regards to suffering. And some of the sources that came to my mind are Lionel Corbett, who is a Jungian analyst.
Mhm.
He actually teaches at Pacifica University in California, and he came to a program not so long ago here, and we discussed some of the findings in his book. Sonia, if you haven't read, it's an amazing book. It's The Soul in Anguish. and he specifically talked about this anguish in the mental health perspective as it counters the need for Western medicine to treat those ailments, those suffering, not from the perspective. So you talked about going beyond the symptom, right? But he also added the perspective of you should not have to categorize or classify. Oh, Sonia, you came here and you telling me this, therefore diagnosis, right? So
Mhm.
and it's quite a thick book, by the way, but he talks about in a very ample manner about that concept. And the other one was the iconic now book by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, right, on death and dying. And I believe she published that in late 60s, but her research was all about the process of dying and how hard it is for us to even discuss it. And because we're hiding, I don't know if you agree with that, so love your opinions. But in her book, right at the beginning, she talks about how our discomfort with the idea of death, material death, leads us to hide that higher understanding or deep understanding of what we need. And that goes into the George Washington University Institute of Health, right? To talk about compassion and having that face to face to talk with the patient, not just treat the illness, but treat the patient. And she talks about in the 60s how she, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, sees a rise, like technology is helping us do really well with physical illnesses, but there is a rise now into mental illnesses or emotional lack of emotional well-being because it's what's coming up, what's surfacing. So I love what you're saying here because it's coming from so many different perspectives, right, Sonia? This idea that it's truly a it's dictating to us where we stand today that we must look for the real causes of illnesses, of diseases, and how it goes beyond the body, right?
Yeah, and on that point, I think we learn more with Spiritism
Yes.
when, right, when we look, and again, this is in chapter 5 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, Blessed are the afflicted, for
Mhm.
those who want to read a little more. But every suffering has a cause.
Yes.
Physical, mental, whatever type of suffering has a cause. And if we don't find the cause on this life during this incarnation, we
Yeah.
must look for a cause in the past because there is a cause. Many times, and most times, the causes of afflictions, of our suffering, of our pain, is derived from our bad inclinations, our
Yeah.
intemperance,
Yeah.
imprudence,
Yeah.
pride, ambition, all the vices that we all have, more or
Yeah.
less. So we create suffering.
Yeah. So it's from within, right? If in so many words, what Kardec in this beautiful book, everyone, if you haven't read it, you can just read chapter 5, right? It's just
Right.
beautiful, based on the Sermon of the Mount, where Jesus talks about the Beatitudes, right? And he
Mhm.
says, "Blessing are the afflicted," but in the Gospel according to Spirit, it just breaks down the types of afflictions and how we say we are blessed for having them. But in so many words, I was thinking about that because suffering comes from within, it is ours, right? Um, we can talk about it is our emotional pain that is the materialization of our suffering, but Sonia, and I know I interrupted your train of thought, so my apologies, but this is quite a good conversation today.
Yeah.
But that emotional pain, right? So I suffer for whatever reason, but there is a cause that I'm involved in that cause, right? Read chapter 5, and you see that very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm suffering, I have an actual emotional pain that is a result of that suffering that can indeed lead to my physical, emotional, mental illnesses. So tell me a little bit. Put your hat as a medical doctor, right? You have dedicated your life to understand the connection between medicine, spirituality. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about that, right? How we need to be keenly aware of our physical, emotional, mental response to our own suffering, and what can we do to understand better and lead. And you mentioned medicine is transforming itself, right? It's changing it from a more compassionate field. But what can we do when we understand that? When we understand that, hey, I'm here because.
Yeah. Mental suffering
Yeah,
is the bottom of every suffering. No matter whether the cause of our suffering was an accident,
mhm,
surgery, or just something that happened, I lost my job, or something like
yeah,
that. There are several types of pain: social pain, physical pain, spiritual pain, when I don't understand, my religion is not attending to my
yeah,
needs.
yeah.
There's in mental pain, but mental suffering is actually putting all together
Mm,
and make us then leading into anxiety, depression, and all sorts of things when we get completely drained into all these problems. So there is now more and more, I think, research that has been done involving spirituality in medicine, looking at how one can resort to spiritual care or to
yeah,
spiritual practices that help them overcome that situation. So this is very easy to understand in mental disorders,
yeah,
mental disturbances, I would say. When a person has anxiety or has some kind of depression, being deep or not so deep, but through meditation, for example, there's so many types of meditation nowadays. They
yeah,
can kind of uh, get better, improve.
yeah,
In
yeah. Go ahead. Hmm.
in
Hmm.
physical illnesses, also like cancer, and people say, "Wow, how meditation can help in cancer?" Well, there are so many. Works, studies that have been published and showing, because when we um, have pain in our body, physical pain, that changes
Yeah,
our mental state, which impact in hormones and brain hormones that are circulating into our body. So when we meditate, when we pray, when we do good things, good acts, when we work, for example, do volunteer work, all that has been proved to change our mental state. And that changes the hormones, the neurohormones, the neuropeptides, and all the other responses of our body
yeah,
to the mental state. So if we can change our mental state, we can change the way our body reacts. And that has been proved to improve the responses, for example, of cancer to the treatment. So you
And
are
this is
with,
your area of study, right, Sonia? The
yeah,
hormones and all this. So really, really interesting that the impact, hormonal, right? Hormonally speaking, the impact even to terminal patients, such as cancer patients, into changing that. I keep thinking, Sonia, and I'm just thinking about here, based on what Joanna de Angelis in her book, Plenitude, which is her third book in her psychological series or psychological collection, right? And she says something like, when we start to understand that our illnesses, so let's say that cancer patient, right, is actually a mechanism, right, for my soul to push me to really just uncover, and I'm putting my hands here because it feels like you just have to rip it apart to uncover all the potential beyond my physical body, right? So it's almost as if we started talking about fear of missing out, and we talked a little bit about choices, not choices from that perspective, very material perspective. But here now we go back to that idea that if we fall prey to only looking at life from a very material perspective, it's almost as if that illness comes to us as a gift to wake up, right? Wake up and look, your body is telling you, wake up to all the potential that you have within. And once we do this, we start our own path toward healing. Does this resonate with you, Sonia?
absolutely. And
Mhm.
that is when we say we need to understand. And that's when I would say it's important to study, it's important to read, to
Yeah.
get into these ideas, because
Hmm.
this is a chance that we have for
Hmm.
learning, interpreting our suffering as a learning experience as awaken from
Yes.
our idea that we are here just for this period of incarnation. I'm here
Yeah.
from when I'm born until I die, and that's
Yeah.
all that exists. We need to get out of that idea. And
Yeah.
for that, we need to read and understand, for example, and that's when spirituality comes, because spirituality brings you the idea that we survive after the death of our body. So, and actually, when
And it's
we,
not a not so novel concept, by the way, right? That the
no,
immortality of the soul, it's thousands of years we have
exactly.
inherited that. But go
But
ahead, Sonia.
people forget about that, Marcia, and they think they concentrate on this
The bookends, right?
limitation.
The birth and death.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
and we need to awaken to the idea that we are eternal spirits.
Yes,
That
yes.
because otherwise, the when Jesus said, "Blessed are the afflicted,"
Yeah,
because they inherit the kingdom of God.
yeah,
How we should interpret that if we are here just for this and after we die everything disappears?
yeah,
So
yeah,
we need to understand, and that's when spirituality comes in handy, that we are spirits that transcend death, transcend. So the period that we are suffering here is only a dot in our eternal life.
yeah,
Uh, and when Jesus said, "Blessed are the afflicted," Jesus is talking about the happiness that we will have afterwards, not exactly here. Yes, we can choose to be happy here, but we are, if we also choose to to resign, to understand, to accept the will of God,
Yeah. Yeah.
we can kind of visualize a more complete happiness in future lives, because we see suffering as a cleansing of our soul, as a learning. We are learning to going through this, but not going against God. God put me to this. God is punishing me. That's not true.
Yeah. Free
Suffering
will,
is not
everyone. Free will,
free
everyone,
will.
right? And
So
I keep thinking here when we just to interject a little bit, right? Because the reality is that we have so much fear, right? We are fear. We're afraid of falling sick, right? We just came out of a global pandemic not so long ago, right? 2 years ago, when well, not 2 years, more than 2 years, when the World Health Organization said, uh, right, March 6th, we are undergoing a global pandemic, and I just recalled the fear of that, right? Of touching, of breathing, of anything, of the basic components of living. It was all somehow taken away out of fear. But there are other fears as well, such as poverty, fear of loneliness, fear of like just not being loved or not being able to love, fear of failure, fear of death, and it's all because we're not really prepared or unable yet to understand that divine essence, that sense of immortality that you talked about it. So I think that the one thing that comes just from this brief comment that you gave to us just now, that if we accept and welcome and embrace our divine essence and how our souls are immortal, we right there we start to overcome those types of anxiety driven fears, right?
yeah, fear is a very, very negative sentiment,
Yeah.
right? And it drains our energy away. So that's what we need. As you said, we need to understand that we are divine
Yeah.
beings, that
Yes.
we have God protection. And sometimes people do not understand what's God protection. God protection, we have so many things. Even medicine, which is advancing, is a protection that God has put at our disposal. We can use that. We can use all professionals to help us. We can use um, our faith. And faith is something that I would like to bring here,
Yes. Yeah.
because faith really changes. If we have faith, we have courage. If we have faith, we make ourselves stronger. We can, faith is almost, for me, is almost like something that you can hang on. It's
Yeah.
there, you can hang on and go. But it needs to be true faith. It needs to be a solid faith,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because,
And what do we mean by that, right? Because according to Spiritism, we really should not, and I'm an example of that. Sonia, as a young child, I just needed to feel that faith as it was expressed into a rather blind faith, like that sense of I don't know. You can see in Italian Baroque cathedrals with the ecstasy of Santa Teresa sculpture, and you're like, oh, I want that sense of connection. And Spiritism says, wait. You really need to have that rational faith. And the rational faith is let's look at our intelligence, our knowledge, our understanding of the world and question everything. But the more you question, the more the deeper your faith becomes, because God is there. This divine sense of compassion and mercy is there, right, Sonia? And we can't really hang on to that. Believe me, we can hang on to the love that comes from God.
Absolutely. And faith, even in science, if we didn't have faith that something else is there that we don't know
Uh-huh.
yet, we wouldn't be doing research.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
I would go a little,
As a
my
researcher, right? As a researcher, I have to tell you, hold on.
my colleagues may not agree with
Yeah.
me, but that's how I see.
Uh,
If I thought that everything that is already here, that there's nothing else than what I see and
yeah,
feel, why would I be doing research?
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, if we look at every day, the database is growing, growing, growing by the
Yes,
millions of papers published, of studies that have been done, because researchers believe that there's something else that is
yeah.
not known yet. And
Unveiling, right? Unveiling, little by little.
unveiling,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and that's true with all of us. Uh, if we only believe in what we see, we are losing things. So having faith in what we have through Spiritism bring us so many things, so much knowledge through what the spirits revealed by Kardec and then later by other works. For example,
mhm,
that Francisco Xavier wrote through
yes,
the spirits.
yeah.
And if we look, again, I'm going to bring science a little bit here, Marshall,
Oh,
just
please.
forgive me. But even within science, spirits brought forth knowledge
Mhm.
before science discovered it. And we have examples of that. We have even a paper published in the US by physicians from Brazil that bring that out. So, yeah, we need to have faith uh, that God created us not to fail.
Oh,
God
love it.
created us
Yeah,
to progress.
yeah,
God created us to have experiences and learn and make good profit of this learning. So every day I get better. If I look back just in this living experience that I am now, I look
mhm,
back and I say, oh, would be so good if I back then, 40 years ago, I know what I know now,
yeah,
right? Because I would have made better choices.
yeah.
So we learn, we become better, and we are able, God through that enable us to make good choices. Give us free will because we are free to choose. God only created us, gave us the path, but we may stagnate here, complaining why
Yeah.
I'm suffering and crying and not doing anything. So
Yeah.
let's look forward, make good choices, have courage, have faith that God's here with us, that we can ask for help and we truly will be helped. And we can be happier during this life.
Yeah.
And sure, if we make good choices, we are certainly designing a happier life for the future.
Absolutely. I love it. Actually, there's a book, Happy Life, right, by Joanna de
Uh-huh.
Angelis. And I often look into it. It's just a little tiny book with little tiny messages, almost like a daily affirmation of how to be happy and the many different angles into how we hide from our happiness, right, Sonia? But I think we can close now as we're coming to the end of our time with this notion that science and faith, and you heard from an amazing scientist here, Sonia Doi, Dr. Sonia Doi, who's telling us let's do both, right? Let's not stop researching and looking for answers, unveiling the answers that we all have already within us. Have to say that, but to have faith that there's more to life than this material lens to our own suffering, and finally that our choices are the reason, they're the cause, the reason, and the trigger to our infinite happiness, as Joanna de Angelis says. Sonia, thank you so much for being with us. I invite you right now to come back at a later time, and we'll can continue or get a different topic on how medicine and spirituality walk so close together. For you who is here with us today, all of you, thank you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for watching, and see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.